Thank you very much, Dr. Pachauri, for those excellent guiding words. We'll remember them. Writing scientific paper, the excitement phase is pretty good. The hard writing, slogging is pretty difficult. When the reviewers start giving comments, it becomes even more difficult. But nonetheless, that is the only way how science progresses, and peer review is the way to move forward. So thanks for guiding us towards that path. That has been a theme across and during this period, as we discussed. We have come pretty much to the end of our 8 days meeting here, and it is my turn to say a few things. Let me just tell you two stories. The first story is what I called the climate child. This is a true story. Sida cyclone affected the coastal area of Bangladesh and devastated about half of Sundarbans. Really, the Sundarbans was very badly affected. There were enough dead animals, but it affected the human beings very badly in that area too. So, the highest velocity of this cyclone was 274 kilometers per hour, almost unprecedented in these parts ever. And just at that time, there was a crew of 48 international journalists on a boat by the program livecast by BBC, a series of 12 programs in BBC across the world called Boats on the Rivers of Bangladesh. And we were in the coastal area, and there was one shot where I was telling the journalist that if all the predictions are true, then if there a future cyclone comes, it is likely to have much higher velocity. So when the cyclone hit, BBC was showing me, saying that on the other side, tremendous disaster and the losses that was taking place. I called up BBC to stop that, saying, scientists do not predict in that way. It is just a projection, an idea, a sort of modeling. It's not real projection. So please cut it out. But anyway, that cyclone had affected that area. I'll tell the story of a little child in that cyclone. Cyclone had reached this velocity of 270 plus kilometers. A family of husband and wife and young child of 6 years, a daughter, was reasonably comfortable in their village in the coastal area. With this velocity, tremendous, the house was shaking, and the husband, being head of the family, could not decide whether it is right to leave the house or stay in the house because the house could fall. So what he did, he picked up the daughter, ran out and saw that tremendous velocity, house was about to fall. He left the daughter, assessed a big tree, looked at the direction of the wind, put the daughter behind the tree against the wind direction so that she is protected. And the house was just creaking and falling. He ran back to get his wife, managed to bring his wife back. Unfortunately, that daughter was flown away by the velocity of that cyclone. I have met that couple. That is the phase of climate change. That, I'm sorry, it's a bit morbid, but let's get to the realities. That's what's going to happen more and more and more. Different places. Dr. Pachauri just mentioned the 4,000 additional deaths in Andhra due to heat waves, but many such children. They did not cause the problem. That family did not emit greenhouse gas. They use 1.5 hours to 2 hours of a candle wick of a lamp in the evening. That's their greenhouse gas consumption. 1/100th of average OECD citizen. Now let me go to the second story. It's about the traveling mother. From El Salvador, one of the NGOs, like we are, many of us, was transferred to Senegal in a posting. So the wife was following him later, and she was in advanced stage of pregnancy. The plane took off from El Salvador to go to Senegal, went over Florida, and there was a disturbance in the air, and it was quite bad, a lot of turbulence. So the plane had to force land in Florida. So started from El Salvador, was supposed to go to Senegal, Dhaka, landed up forced in Florida. Because of all these disturbances and nervousness and everything, the lady gave birth to the baby there in Florida. Because she was born in US, she has all the entitlement to US citizenship. And I, as a modeler, as a scientist, can chart the course of consumption of that child from El Salvador to Dhaka and compare with the fact that she is in USA. And it would be, I can say, how many hamburgers she will have in her lifetime, how many miles she will fly in that during her lifetime projected, how much land she will have in her house, and everything is order of magnitudes. Some are 10, some are 100, some are 300. 1,000 times more. Now, this is the state, so the consumption behavior and the cause of climate change is what human beings have created. We created the society to create that consumption. Some people did sometime over the industrial period, and now those effects are being felt. Now nature, God, creator, evolution, whatever we define, gives the child in mother's womb, if the mother is not drug addict or taking too many cigarettes or taking the wrong food, more or less same allocation for the child in mother's womb. So, creator or whoever has done a job pretty much universally equivalent. Not equal, but equivalent. But the fact that the moment the child is born, the allocation is divided up. So that is the history of that child, where these are accidents where allocation becomes different and causes of climate change and the amount of contribution become different. So who dies out of climate change? And who flies more? Or who travels more? Or who emits more greenhouse gas? Becomes one of the key issues. Which way we go, mitigation, adaptation, what we do, we have to do both, as we know. So mitigation is a must, and we must equally adapt, because adaptation is a consequence of mitigation. But if we do not mitigate, as I said earlier, and Dr. Pachauri mentioned also, our adaptation costs, adaptation capabilities, all the efforts of the governments, NGOs, everybody putting into development will be diverted towards meeting the adaptation needs. So our development process will be affected. Our ordinary people, the women many of you saw in the villages when you traveled, we are talking here about integration. Many of these households are women-aided households. That lady there, she is the health minister, food minister, energy minister, water minister, transport minister, health minister of that household. She is integrated. In the process of our governance, we disintegrate that. Then we call for integration. So, integration happens at the local level, and people have been doing it. Our case for integration has to be, is pretty strong and has to be there. Mitigation and adaptation, they can go together in many, many cases. For example, improve the stove in the local communities. As you know, saves trees, saves energy, helps the health of the women whose lungs get very badly affected of respiratory diseases. Or efficient fluorescent bulb decreases greenhouse gas, gives more focus light, makes it cheaper, so it works in both ways. Application of fertilizers properly. With less fertilizers, we can grow more food. And those sort of practices, efficiency issues, are all central. Now, for most communities, what they're looking for is not really adaptation. They're looking for their own development. They want food security, water security, energy security, health security, livelihood security. They want their children to be educated. They want to get up the ladder and probably consume more and generate more greenhouse gas in the process. But they have the right to develop. And that is something we must recognize. And that is the basis on which we must work in that sense. So whether it's disaster risk reduction or all the efforts we are putting towards Millennium Development Goals will be undermined by the impacts of climate change. So the poverty efforts that is being taken, and for many years when we started, Salim and I started BCS, and many of these activities were going on, many of our gurus, our peers were saying, why are you wasting your time in this climate change esoteric, someday it may happen, Why not focus purely on poverty reduction? And we said, we are doing that, but one day, if climate change is coming to be true, then many efforts on poverty reduction will be highly undermined by the impacts of climate change. And that's what we are seeing now. Health impacts, poverty impacts are becoming extremely visible, and also separating the societies. Those who can adapt, those who have the money, the rich of the poor countries, the rich of obviously the rich countries, but also the rich of the poor countries and the poor of the poor countries. The poor are differentially and badly affected. So I think community-based adaptation, whatever name we call it, however you approach it, we do need the rigor, as had been mentioned. We need to replicate it many more times. We have to have the right knowledge, and we have to put it back, as Yusuf Nasif had said, to the negotiators in a way so that they get these principles right and understand it well. Our central issue on this, as we know, I think the community-based adaptation movement, if we want to call it, within the climate thinking or the activities going on across the world is moving on, and this conference is a testimony to that. Our first, second, third, fourth, if we follow the progress, we'll see people are appreciating it more, understanding and trying to develop the science. As Salim has rightly said, our Vietnamese colleagues will be in charge of the 2012 Sixth World Conference on climate change, on community-based adaptation. The seventh in 2013 will be held again in Dhaka, as we have already planned 1 year out somewhere else, second year in Bangladesh. And for 2013, we'll be preparing ourselves to do it in Bangladesh. I just want to raise one point which is not much discussed these days. Where are we going all this in the longer term? There's already a larger movement growing, which is on geoengineering and solar radiation management. Now, what is happening is our governments in their negotiation process have not done very well. They even live in the negotiating world, part of the government, live in a cocoon, in a world where they think, how clever they are in manipulating words is what matters. They don't realize they are being stupid. What matters is how do we decrease our greenhouse gas fast, rapidly, for their own children and others' children. If they don't do it, they're murderers. They're not taking the responsibility seriously. They're shifting the chairs in a sinking Titanic. But they play games, how clever they are. I am a negotiator. On behalf of the government, I've been negotiating as an NGO, and I see how clever they are. Oh, I have stopped that system. That world must change rapidly. If we don't, then the emergence of geoengineering and solar radiation management will become more and more eminent and evident. Royal Society, having been requested by the British Parliament, has set up a committee on solar radiation management. I happen to be a member of that committee. And in future, there will be clouds formed by pumping water into the high atmosphere, fine particles. These clouds would be formed to stop the solar radiation and then drop it at the place where there's drought. There will be cloud over Bangladesh. We will form it. Somebody else might want that cloud, so they will try to take that cloud away by seeding with silver iodide, silver bromide, and there is a possibility of cloud conflict, if not cloud war. Funny as it looks, those are the world ahead of us. Either we take ourselves seriously or leave it to these apparent, negotiators with whom we have vested our planet, and very often they are no more than jokers in this heavily packed world of conflicts. So I think we have to take it seriously and let them come and see. Talk to the hundreds of people who are working with the communities and ask them what the communities are demanding, what the communities are needing, how quickly do we need to stop climate change. And these are serious issues for the future. I just wanted to highlight that climate change is not a static dimension. When we started first climate change issues, and a seminal paper written by Anil Agarwal on equity in climate in a global warming world, most scientists said, don't disturb us with these equity issues and other issues. They are not the relevant ones. We are now trying to, it's a molecular issue. So it was an issue of molecules, then it became an issue of molecules plus dollars, then now it's an issue of molecules plus dollars plus human beings, plus misery, plus future, foretelling of a future which doesn't look very pleasant. This idea that the planet is being affected, the planet will be lost. No. Planet will not be lost. Planet will continue. It's the human species that is being threatened, and other species too. So that's where I think we have to go with this. And we as people working at the community level, working with whether it's disaster risk reduction, whether it's community adaptation, whether it's lowest level development, whether it's local government strengthening, all that come into this package of community adaptation, and we have discussed enough about that. I think I better stop there with respect to the issue of community adaptation and climate change. Let me, as an organizer, I have to say a couple of things and thank a few people, obviously. We have promised the book, hopefully, will be there. I, as an organizer, am having to report to the logos that you saw, our friends who have supported us, we have to give them report. What I would very much like, the session leaders and those who have formed separate new groups, those are the emerging, groups and activities out of this meeting, if you would not mind writing just 1 to 2 pages on what the process is, what had happened, who had participated in your group, what were the conclusions, what outcome do you see, and what are the follow-up actions. Just, short paragraphs on each of those. You could do it in the plane on your way back. You could send it to us. You could do it here. That would help us tremendously, because then we'll be able to see where and how to report all that. What was, for me, the greatest pleasure after we went through a bit of a uncertainty in the first inaugural session, which was not necessarily very good for blood pressure, but it's okay, we can take it. After that, what was most pleasant to me, that the conference went on an auto drive. The organizers were not that much more needed. The various theme leaders, they took on, and the parallel sessions were going smoothly. Only we had to provide various basics, but then the leadership, the enthusiasm. So basically it shows that this is a conference of leaders, where people can take leadership and do it themselves, which has been extremely gratifying for us as organizers. I'm sure I speak for Salim on that. It is indeed my pleasure that I have to thank a few named people, and of course, above all of you for coming. It makes no sense if you guys weren't here. So first of all, thanks to all of you for coming, for making it successful. I know it's not easy. Some of you had not much trouble on visa and others, because our government has been so kind as to give a special visa on arrival to everybody who has been authorized, registered in this conference, if they didn't have an embassy in their country or otherwise. And the government has set up a committee with multiple ministries: Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, the Chief of Police, the Chief of Immigration, the Chief of Civil Aviation. All that group has helped us to facilitate this. Many of you obviously do not know what happened behind the scene. Some of you, those who have gone to the field, you might have seen 1 or 2 people hanging around with you, and these were people from the police, trying to be sure that you go through the right route, you are taken care of, there aren't any unpleasant realities. And I'm so delighted. 300 people went to the field, 300 people came back, and came back hale and hearty, which was good. So thanks to all of you for taking the trouble. Hope we'll see you again in 2013 and many more. I have to thank the government of Bangladesh, particularly the Prime Minister, for coming and sharing her time with us, the Minister of Environment and Forest, the Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Forest, and somebody was saying they haven't seen many government people. There has been many, many government people, from the Disaster Management Bureau to the local government people, Water Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, Forestry Ministry. There has been a lot of people from the government, but they were the hosts, so they didn't assert themselves that much. It is the place. So they were there, and they have been very, very active in helping us, doing lots. So I am most grateful on behalf of the organizers, and I'm sure on your behalf, to the government of Bangladesh. And if you won't mind joining me to give a hand to the government of Bangladesh. Then to Hotel Sheraton, 300 people, 3 parallel meetings with 150, 200 people, not always easy, but this was one of the venues which offered that given us some opportunities. I'll tell you, the last favor they have done is those of you who are supposed to check out today, you don't have to check out at 12 o'clock up to 6 o'clock in the evening without any further demand or payment. You can carry on till those who are leaving this evening. And for those who are leaving tomorrow, the same applies. up to 6 p.m. you can check out. So, they are trying to be helpful. Some of the people, the food may not have been terribly varied, but within the range of, what is possible in mass catering, this is the best you could get under the circumstances. So I think they've done reasonably well. I have to thank, to get such a meeting going, you need a core of volunteers, people you don't see, people in my office who are sitting and doing all the things behind the scene, the printer who has smoothly, circulated, the press, we didn't, one of the things that I have to explain, that we did not want, and this was an earlier decision based on earlier experience, that the Bangladeshi local numbers has to be limited. In conference as such, if the local number of participants increases more than 10 to 12%, then it becomes local, very local issues come up too much. But here, there is a global meeting, and that is the reason. My apologies to my colleagues in Bangladesh, my friends in Bangladesh, that we could not accommodate as many as we wanted, but there were plenty there. My last, or second last, is to my colleagues. Few names I must say, without which this would not have been possible, absolutely. And from IAED's side, Salim, Hannah, Corinne, without these three people, I don't know, with time difference and everything, we drove them crazy. They also drove us crazy, but life went perfectly all right. And in my office, Natasha, Ghulam Rabbani, and Raina, these were 3 people out of the 30, 40 people who have been putting their efforts, and they have done, I think, a reasonably good job for keeping you all looked up. Last of all, I'd like to thank all of you. And again, the Prime Minister has been extremely generous. She wanted a feedback from us, what has happened here. So there is policy interest. How quickly can we get these policies into implementation does take that amount of time and transfer. There has been right suggestions. I won't call them criticism in any negative way, but a lot of issues we have not been able to discuss that much. Migration, one issue that has been pointed out. Geoengineering, one issue. But what we will go out from here is communities better organized. The journey of community-based adaptation is getting stronger. What it means, how to integrate, how to get out of the silo mentality into integration. Again, I think we have to learn from the poor on that one, and we can definitely do better. I hope your field visits has been useful. We saw some representation yesterday. Our colleagues with British Council, particularly the youth who have produced these films, have done a marvelous job. So all of us, I think we can all thank everybody else for doing all the hard work that goes with it. With those few words, all I have to do will break for lunch, and all I have to do is to wish you bon voyage, but the journey of CBA continues. That's where we stop.